I'm so glad that you guys are here, and we have lots of fun things that we're going to do this year. But our first guest, I'm really inspired by, and I think it ties into some of the things that I talked about of what to expect in 2023. And one of the things I talked about for sure was guarding your positive mindsets. And I think J.M. Ryerson, who I'm going to introduce here in a second, is going to give us some really tactical things that we can do to make sure that we are getting our best lives out in front of us. And so I think it's going to be super fun. I would tell you, introduce yourself in the chat, say hello, tell us where you're from. And let me just tell you a little bit about the show. So I'm your host, Jerry McNamara. I'm so glad that you're here. And this is the Best Places to Lead show. So listen, we are on a mission to positively impact 5 million people. I used to be able to say in the next 5 years. We're down year one. So now it's in the next 4 years. So I got to update this graphic. Maria, maybe you can help me with that with JP. And so here's the point. I've never had anyone that's shown up to work and said, I really want to suck today. And yet there are so many people that are ineffective in their work. It's not their fault. It's our fault as leaders for not creating the clarity, the tools, time, and training, the resources, and the care that really will allow people to flourish. And so that's why I've created this show. That's why I'm inviting people like JM to come share his perspective, because we are always better together. Oh, and you know this, two are better than one. I believe that with all my heart and soul. And so, as we do this, I think about why I invite a guest on. And so for JM, it's super clear to me, right? People are at the foundation of every great company. And so, yes, we have a business model and we have leaders that help guide people. But at the foundation, the atomic element of great companies is our great people. And so sometimes we get in our own way, and our mindset and our attitude and approach don't serve us, and we don't show up in the most authentic way that we possibly can. And so as I've learned in working with high achievers, the difference between high achievers and the highest achievers are positive mindsets. It's not that bad things don't happen. It's that their ability to get back to center and continue to perform, there's greater resilience in that, greater elasticity in being able to do that. And so for me, that's what this is all about. And so J.M. Ryerson is going to kick us off. He's built 4 companies, right? He has this whole philosophy that's right behind him. If he moves his head a half inch to the left or right, let's go win is right behind him. And J.M., I love this because you said this in our pre-interview, that you're obsessed with people living their best lives. And I thought that was super cool. We had Steve Anderson on, who wrote the Bezos letters, and he talked about Jeff Bezos being obsessed with customers. And I think it's such like a strong word, a punch in the nose. Tell us about Let's Go Win and why you're obsessed with people living their best lives.
I'm not sure why I'm obsessed, other than I love the idea of winning. And as you and I talked off air initially, I wrote about Let's Go Win in a journal years, like 20 some odd years ago. And then I forgot about it for 20 years. This journal sat in a memento box. And so this idea of let's go win, i.e., if you're winning, I'm winning. If I'm winning, you're winning, instead of it being I'm winning, you're losing, right? I don't believe in that. I don't think that's the way the world works. And I know that some people feel that way, but the whole idea for me is I don't know why you wouldn't want to win, right? As you said, people don't show up to work and they're like, yes, I'm going to suck today. This is going to be so crappy. That's not the way it works, although it does happen because we don't set proper expectations. We don't know what we're supposed to do. We don't know why we're doing it. And all those things get in the way. But, there's some basic tangible things that we can do to set ourselves up to win on a daily basis. And I want to share that. That's the whole idea, is like, look, it's not complex, although our world can seem complex at times. If we simplify everything, follow a couple basic guidelines, I think we can go live our best lives. And I also have to say, Don writing 7 books, did I see? That's insane. I'm literally going insane in a good way, Don. I think it's amazing. But my brain broke a little bit when you said that, because I'm still working on a book that's been almost a year. So anyway, congrats to that as well.
I think you're right? I think simple, not easy. And I think sometimes, when I speak with my wife, Rachel, and I say like, oh my gosh, I just spoke with this company who I may potentially work with, but I can't believe these certain things that seem so elementary and trivial to me, But as she reminds me, she said, sweetheart, you've run 5 businesses. You have more context, you have more experience, and that's why they're speaking to you. And so share with us the framework and the mindset behind Let's Go Win. Because I think, if I recall correctly, you dusted that thing off for your kids. You wanted to share with some lessons with your kids. Share that with us.
Yeah. So the first book has started the whole thing. I started writing a book for my now 16 and 13-year-old sons. And the whole idea was I didn't want them to scrape their knees as many times as I did because it was a lot. I was bloodied up often. And so the whole idea is like, look, there's some basic things that maybe you don't have to make this mistake, that mistake. And so that started the whole idea. And I was writing the book, and the gal that was working with me said, man, you're selfish. And I said, what do you mean I'm selfish? I don't think I'm selfish. She said, if you only share this book with 2 human beings, you are absolutely selfish. Okay, lesson learned, publish the book. And so the whole idea is broken down into 12 chapters of what I felt were really impactful things. Like I start off the first chapter with vulnerability because I'm a kid from Montana that was taught boys don't cry. Horrible lesson. Don't teach that. That's a bad idea. But that was what I was taught. And so I wanted my kids to know, look, it's okay. Share when you feel, I don't want you to stuff that deep down. I want you to go ahead and let it out because that's volcanic nastiness. And so that starts the book off. But in terms of Let's Go Win, the basic idea is to take care of you first so that you can take care of all of the other things that you have in this world, i.e., being a spouse, significant other, employer, brother, sister, whatever hat you're wearing at the time. You can't show up as the best version of you unless you take care of you first. And so that's literally the most basic ideology of what Let's Go Win is all about is, all right, and you hear about morning routines and I see people's eyes rolls all the time. But when I start to coach with them, I'll ask, especially my female clients, and I see there's a lot of females on today. When I say, hey, what did you do for yourself today? They'll be like, oh, I took care of the house and the kids and the dog and the career. And I mean, they list like 90 things. And I said, I asked, what did you do for you? And the whole idea is that we've forgotten to put our mask on first, like they say in the airplane, like put your mask on first and then your child's. And that's the whole idea of Let's Go Win is let's go take care of us now so that we can show up as the best employee, employer, husband, whatever hat you're wearing. And it's been an amazing journey because I've been able to work with so many different businesses or executives or athletes, and the same principles are applicable in any field has been the idea.
I think you're right. That's my experience too. I mean, I've run 5 businesses, 5 different industries, B2B, B2C, products and services. The principles are the principles are the principles. And, that's the piece I always love when someone says to me, oh, no, you don't understand my industry. I just kind of chuckle like, yeah, you're right. Your industry is different. Your life is different. And the answer is it's not. And I think one of the things that you spoke about, and I've spoken about this before, the best piece of advice that I've ever gotten in my life was from my brother. And my brother loved to party more than he loved to go to school. So he got kicked out of college, went into the Navy, thank him for his service. And as he was leaving our shared bedroom, because we had bunk beds as kids, he said, learn from my mistakes. I made them for you. And I was like, oh, interesting. Never heard of that. I'm supposed to learn from my own mistakes, my own skin knees. And the reality of it is you can be hyper vigilant and hyper aware and say yes to that, no to that, yes to that, no to that. And that to me was a game changer in my life. And the whole idea of we are better together. It's why I do this show, because you have a set of experiences that are different than mine. And while we may have agreement and philosophies, you have different approaches. And so someone may go like, what JM said, that is so good, made me think like differently and unlock something else that happens really good for them in their life in 2023. Walk me through, JM, like the principles that you look at inside Let's Go Win and the work that you do. We talked about if you take care of your mind and your body and your soul, that it unlocks the other pieces of things. Tell me more about that.
What I've found in all the coaching that I've done is that people want one thing I know for certain. This has been across countries, every border you can think of. culturally, it doesn't matter. Everyone wants to be happy. It's like the universal thing. Hey, why are you doing this? I want to be happy. Cool. So if we all want to be happy, how do we go about it? And you're right. In my opinion, it starts with our mind, our body, and our soul. And so the basic idea is, look, I don't care if it's for an hour you spend every single day, it's 2 hours, it's 5 minutes each. Just spend a moment on your mind just to get better, a little bit better, different perspective, whether it's reading or it's listening to a podcast. Spend some time on your mind. Okay, cool. Our body, everybody knows you should work out, but why? Why is it important? Well, A, we want to stay healthy. The other common thing that I've found in coaching, happy, healthy, and the third is wealthy, which are the values of my company. And everyone knows that we want to be healthy, but so often I'm like, well, why do you actually work out in the morning? Oh, so my body feels good. No, it's because your mind, it literally is rocket fuel for your mind. The moment you work out, the endorphins fire and you're like, oh, yes, I'm alive. And then lastly, checking in on the soul or the spirit, whichever one you want to call it. I call it soul. And that is, I don't care if you meditate, you walk on a beach, you climb a mountain, whatever your thing is, just time for you to really reflect, time for you to spend time, quiet time to know, where am I going? Why am I doing these things? Is what I'm doing making me happy? If not, why am I doing it? There's some really basic, simple questions that we can ask ourselves. And when you do, it's like, oh, I don't enjoy doing this, so maybe I shouldn't any longer, because it's all a matter of choice. So to answer your question, I know I went on a long-winded tangent there, but it is mind, body, soul. And when you do that, now you're getting real clarity on where you're going and why. Set your intention for the day. And next thing you know, you're having an amazing day. And then it's like a domino. You do it again and again and again. You had an amazing year. And it's just creating those routines and habits.
I call it priming the pump, right? You're creating unfair advantages for yourself by simply doing the basic things that we all know we should be doing. And yet, I'll speak for myself. Like everyone said it was COVID-19. I kept on correcting them. I said it was COVID-20 because I gained 20 pounds during COVID. And so I'm back in the gym. I'm back working out. And it's fantastic because you have to be in that mindset of taking care of yourself first. And I can already feel a heightened energy, better clarity of thought. All of those things are just like the outputs. You're like, God, I'm so dumb. Why didn't I do that before? And life gets in the way. It's a simple thing. For you, JM, what do those things look like for you? How do they manifest? Maybe you can give some tangible examples of maybe your morning routine or things that you do throughout the day where someone goes like, oh, I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, mine's substantial. And I know my morning routine. I've tried to coach it to others and people are like, dude, I'm not getting up at that time and I'm not doing it for 2+ hours, which is kind of what mine looks like. And I get that because look, life is busy. We have kids and all the responsibilities that we have. So for me, it is the basic idea of when I wake up, the first thing I do before that left foot hits the ground, because I sleep on that side of the bed, before I'm running to the bathroom to go to the restroom, because I drink a lot of water, I say 3 things I'm grateful for. It's the first thing I do before that left foot hits the ground. Now, everybody's heard to have a gratitude practice, but why? Why have a gratitude practice? Because it's the highest form of energy a human being could be in. You cannot be miserable and grateful at the same time. It doesn't work. So the first thing I start my day with is literally 3 things I'm grateful for. If my wife's awake, I'll say it out loud. If she's not, I say it quietly in my mind. And that starts my whole day. Now, once I've done that, now I'm getting into my meditation. And for me, meditation has just been a huge part of my life. And I don't care for some people if they like to meditate or they don't. My mom hates it. She's like, I can't meditate, which it's another conversation. But for me, it's been a huge part of my life and it will always continue to be because it allows me to respond and not react. And it allows me to have real clarity of where I'm going. Then I'm starting to get the body going and I want to get active. So my whole idea is just to sweat on a daily basis. Now that I've done that, a little journaling happens, then 10 pages or so of reading. Often it becomes much more of that. Then I get into all start feeling the body and whatnot. And that's my basic overall routine. But one of the things that I do is set that intention. And I think people miss that. It's such a simple thing because along the way, yes, I said I was grateful, but then maybe I stubbed my toe. Maybe I didn't have a great meditation. I'm cleaning up the dog's, deficit on the carpet, whatever it may be, right? And so now I'm not feeling as great as I want to be. So now let's set an intention of what I'm going to do today. And so for me today, it was to be wildly optimistic in every interaction. That was what I set for today. And so when I wasn't, I remind myself, what was your intention? And when you put it in the conscious mind, instead of sitting back in the subconscious, now we're going to show up that way. And so that's my basic overall routine. For my clients, it's a much more simplistic version of that, and it can take 15 minutes for people. For me, it's about 2 hours.
I love that. Thank you for sharing your morning routine. Like you, I have a fairly substantial morning routine that has the same elements in it. And what I will tell you is every wildly successful person I know has some elements of this in their day. It doesn't always happen in the morning, but it happens somewhere along the way. My first intention, and I was chuckling as you were saying yours for today, but the one that I say every morning is I will add an insane amount of joy into the world today. Right. And you just constantly looking for ways in which you can add joy, and it happens. And I was so excited yesterday, and I haven't been able to watch it yet, but my favorite book is The Book of Joy, which is an interview between Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And there's a Netflix special that just launched yesterday that captured their interview together. I'm very excited. I think you all should watch it, and you should all read the book, because I think that's our highest purpose coming back to this. How do we create fulfillment, your life on your terms, which is everything you're talking about, that conscious intention of how we do this? Because probably much like you, people that I interact with that are disillusioned, it's like they're blowing like a leaf in the wind. And they're like, I'm just not happy. I'm not getting what I want. It's like, well, what do you want? Like, I don't know. Like, they've lost their North Star. They've lost the thing that's going to get them moving. And I talk a lot about trajectory. Like, just get us moving in the right direction. Velocity can come later, but at least get us moving in the right direction. And so I think that's super important. You had shared a story with me that I really identified with, because I had a similar one. And it's when this gets out of whack, right? When we're not doing the things that we need. And for you, it was the second company that you were building. And it was, we both hated showing up at work. And it spilled into all of these other areas. Can you share that story and how it impacted you both personally and in your family life?
Yeah, so it's one of those moments that I'm so grateful, even though it almost resulted in a divorce. It didn't, but I was separated for a year. My two most important things that I have ever created, my two boys, I wasn't having full time with them. I was losing that. My health was a mess. Although financially, it's making a lot of money. Everybody's, oh, your business is so successful. It was miserable. And the whole idea, if you look over this shoulder, is called show up as you. I wasn't. I was showing up as a version that I thought I was supposed to be. And the easy example is, again, I'm a kid from Montana. I wear jeans and a tee. That's just who I am. And I'm super comfortable just being me, but I wasn't back then. That first and second company, I thought I had to look a certain way, had to sound a certain way, had to, be this leader, but it wasn't me. And what was happening is, as I continued to put these masks on, it started showing up at home. Well, now my wife and I are not feeling each other at all. We are creating all sorts of problems, and I own my piece for sure. I was creating no amount of destruction, and it was all because I wasn't being myself. And it's so funny because we were growing at about 15% per year in those companies, and I thought, well, it's not broke, so I don't want to fix it, because in that time, that was my late 20s into my early 30s. It was all about kicking ass and taking names and making as much money. For what? I'm losing the most important things in my world. I'm losing my wife and my kids and my health. what's the point? And so I'm grateful that it happened because it allowed me to realize there's a better way. Well, once I went through all of that, the journey of the self-development, the personal work, looking inside to really see what was hurting here, because hurt people, right? I was just hurting my wife. It wasn't her, it was me. Once I realized and came through that, shocker, my company started making 22% year in, year out, and then went to 30. So now I'm happy as a clam. I'm working less. My relationships are whole and my health is better. And it's so funny, man, to say it today because it's hard to even remember how it was. But I have pictures. I remember that year not being around my kids and how awful that was. But and how fast it happens, because I started this career to support them and then lost my way. And I think that story is not uncommon as I work with clients. I have so many executives that, look, on paper, they're worth 9, 10, 11 figures. And it's like, that's a lot of zeros. How's your health? How's your relationships? How are you actually going to enjoy that? And there's unfortunately so many stories where the fruits of their labor aren't enjoyed because they forget what's really important to them. And so that's the basis of Show Up As You, is just remember who you are, why you're doing it, and checking in on that.
It's a great story. And thank you for sharing it, because it was a personal story. It's a bit of vulnerability there to share it. And I think it's one of the things that we keep on getting sold as a society, that you should chase more and you should chase it now. And I tell people, if you want to, great. But, I have one company that I work with. They said, we don't want to be the biggest. We want to be an operationally excellent company in a stress-free environment where our customers love us. And that's the business that they've created. And it's gone really well. They had their best year ever, have more cash in the bank that they've ever had. But the pursuit wasn't the more and now. The pursuit was excellence. The pursuit was alignment of our vision and our values for our company, of what was right for us. And I think when you get, I think Tony Robbins says it, success without fulfillment is the greatest ripoff of life. And on the outside, same deal. I've run companies where people are like, oh my God, that's amazing. It's like, yeah, but the cost that I'm paying for that, for the price that I'm getting back, is too great. And, I've shared the story before, being 26, running a high growth company, raising venture capital, sleeping on the couch, and feeling like I was having a heart attack at 26. I was like, what am I doing? I was literally counting the dots in the ceiling tile and thinking to myself, what have you done? You're an idiot. And I think when we get ungrounded and we're starting to live on other people's terms as opposed to our terms, when you get there, you will be disillusioned. I promise you, because I've been there, right? I've lived it. You've been there, you've lived it. And so getting really clear on that piece. Tell me about this. There's so many people that have, whether it's imposter syndrome as they go through that, like, am I worthy of this? Like, do I want to tell people that that's actually the pursuit that I'm on? Like, I look at this, like, this is the thing that shows up on my screen, 25 hours a week I'm on calls. And I got to look at that. I'm going to positively impact 5 million people through better business. It's like, I better go do that. Right. But then there's, naturally part of me, like, can I go do that? It's like, yeah, of course I'm going to go do that. Just like you said, yeah, I have some goals this year. It will happen because we will them forward. Tell us about when we have those moments of self-doubt and the self-limiting beliefs. Any tips on how you get to the other side of that? Because there's not a person that I know that hasn't had those moments where they're like, oh shit.
Yeah, man, this is one of my favorite questions, because you're right. We all have them. And I promise you, I'll probably have them tomorrow, and I'm going to answer the same questions I'm going to give to you guys right here. Why do I think this way? Where did that come from? And is it true? And then I'll throw a last one in there. How is it serving me? But the idea is, why do I think this way? Where did that actually come from? Typically, these are hardwired, self-limiting beliefs that we inherited along the way. Okay. Unfortunately, no matter how amazing your parents are, you got the good and you got some of the bad, right? And my best example to this, Jerry, is when I first made over 7 figures in a year, I that's one of those marks where it's like, oh, $1 million, yay. I felt awful. I literally felt like the biggest piece of garbage in the world. And I had to really look and say, why? Money is just it's literally something that's created. It's not, I don't know why we attach so much emotion to it. I do know why, but it's so interesting that this thing has this power over us. Well, then I started going back and really paying attention to when my dad would say, oh, the pretty people belong to the country club. I don't know why being a pretty person's a bad thing, but it was. Or that's for those people. Or money is the root of all evil. Or name whatever is attached to that. Well, guess what? That was just a philosophy that was handed down from my grandfather to my father. Well, my grandfather's father was a rancher in Montana, and it came from a different world, very scarce when it was back in the early 1900s, where there was a lot of scarcity. My point to this is, if you follow where it came from, I'm taking this mindset from back in the late 1800s to early 1900s, because it's continued to go down and down and down. And I'm applying that to today's world. That's kind of crazy if you think about it, but that's what was happening. So why am I thinking that way? Because that was taught to me. Where did that come from? Clearly it came from some of the conditioning that I had, whether it was good or bad. How is that serving me? And it wasn't, because the more money I make, the more I can give back to my favorite charity. I can create another company. Just like you have all these folks here, you're creating an opportunity for them. Anybody that the more money you make, you can provide another opportunity for somebody to provide for their family. It's a good thing, right? If your intentions are pure. But it is interesting if you just slow down and say, why do I think that way? Where does it come from? How is that serving me? And, and then just basic questions. What can I do to change that? And when you do that small process, then you start to figure out, oh, that's where it came from. It's not true. So why do I think that way? Let's start to change. And it's been a really powerful, whether it was, the imposter syndrome, such a fascinating one. It happened to me, the first book, the podcast, the first company, the second company, the third company, the fourth. Every time it comes up, and it's like, why? Why do you think that way? And my wife doesn't fully understand it. God bless her, which is fantastic, because she doesn't go through those emotions. But I did. And so now it allows me to coach others so they don't have to go through some of that pain and anguish and figure out that's all bullshit anyway. So you are exactly what you put out there. And if you're helping people, just like 5 million people, that's a foregone conclusion, brother. You're actually going to help a whole lot more than that. But I love the goal, and I'm here to support it.
Someone asked me, geez, 5 million, why 5 million? I said, I wanted to start small so that I could make sure that I achieved it. And so that's how I started at 5 million. I think this whole concept of self-limiting beliefs, and, I think about the work that I've had to do personally over the course of my life. Like many people in America, I grew up in a dysfunctional, broken home. And there are things that I do where I look and go like, God, that's not who I aspire to be. That's not the person that I want to show up as. Why am I doing that? I know that's a destructive thing. And as I learn, I go back, and sometimes I have to give little Jerry Jr. a hug and say, like, okay, I saw that thing that happened. It did happen, but it doesn't serve you. So we have to change that mindset. We have to acknowledge it and recognize that it's not serving us. And so we're the only people that can do that. And so if you see those patterns in your life where you continue to go down the spiral or have those negative self-doubting beliefs, where is it? Who do we have to go back and give a little hug to? Is it the 6-year-old Jerry Jr.? Is it the 14-year-old Jerry Jr.? Like, where is that? And when you do it, it's amazing. You're like, shit, that's why that happens. That's why I do that. And it has been very liberating for me as well. And when you can, I've had to go through therapy to get to that point of being able to do it for myself, by myself. But you get to places where it's like, oh, okay, well, that's just that thing. There was an area of trauma there, and we acknowledge it and we move it forward. And so I think it's so right. I think the other thing that you said that was really interesting, talking about your finances, right? I had a CEO that I worked with, and he called me 2 years ago, almost, to the day. He's like, I just had my best year ever. I made the most money I've ever made in my life. I never have to work again because I have residual streams of income. I bought a handful of rental properties this year, and Jerry, I am miserable.
Hmm.
And I said, brother, that's because you thought the point was to stack mins in your bank account. So that your business is a tool to go make the impact that you want to go make in the world. So the way I say that is finances create freedom for fulfillment. So what do you want to go do now that we got some shekels in the bank? What do you want to go do? And helped him a little bit through that. And he called me back 6 months later, and he told me about all these amazing programs that he had set up, people he was helping. It's like, this is it. You're right. I was misdirected. I was focused in on the wrong thing. And I've met too many people, that thought money was the thing. And then they got there and looked up and went like, holy shit, is this all there is? It's like, yeah, that's it. All right, now what? And so how did you get to the other side of that? Right. So you had to go through the work, recognize, it's your your grandfather, the rancher, but how did that manifest itself for you personally to give yourself the freedom to say, all right, great, I have this resource. Now what?
I'm not sure how it quite manifested because there's quite a process to go through. Like you said, whether it's therapy or development or the freest form of therapy, which is this, yellow pad and a pen, right? Like that, the paper, I just kept purging, getting it out. Once I realized that the question that you attached to, so you made this, but why? What is the point? When I got to that point, I mean, for thousands of years, Buddhists have been talking about the circle of life, right? This isn't new. So when I talk about with my clients, like financial health, mental health, physical health, spiritual health, like when I go through the 7 areas, that's all regurgitated from back literally 2000 years. And why we continue to forget these lessons, I'm not sure. And that's okay. That's why we have jobs, Jerry, I suppose. But it is interesting once I started to attach the why. And this actually was really fascinating because I've done my own gratitude practice. I told you earlier, and I promise this will make sense in just a moment. And I was doing a podcast with a gal, and she said, you know what I added to my gratitude practice? I'm grateful for X because when I attached the because to that, she's like, I got flooded with all the positive emotions. So I'm grateful for my son because, and now all these amazing things came. Same thing when you attach that to my health goals, right? I want to be pain-free and flexible and active because I want to be able to play with my kids and my grandkids, right? And now it starts to make sense. I want to make, let's say my goal is the $3.3 million this year because I can now fund this charity. I can build this company. I can do. Once I attached the because and the why behind it, everything started to become really easy. It's like, oh, that's why I'm waking up and rising and grinding every single day, because this is what I get to enjoy along the way. And that's the other key, brother. The joy is truly in the journey. And if we ever forget that, like, for instance, this is an interesting day. I just sold out of one of my companies, literally about 35 minutes before hopping on with you.
Did the wire hit?
No, fair enough. The papers were signed. The wire will hit tomorrow. But it's a moment of grief, if you will, because now I built something, poured everything into it. And yeah, I'm getting a financial reward, but that's not what I remember. I remember the time with these people and building this company. So once you start to figure out that the joy is right now, like this moment, this is the joy that is in that journey, everything becomes really rewarding and fulfilling. It's not about the vacation next month and living in that hamster wheel. Right now, this is the moment, because this is all we're guaranteed. So it is interesting how often this comes up, because it literally this is a company that's given me nothing but pain and anguish recently. And yet I'm having a moment of grief because it was an amazing journey. We built some amazing things. And I need to recognize that, like, I lost that part of me, which is cool, but the joy was truly in building it along the way. So I hope that answers your question, brother, but it is a fascinating one that I check in on frequently to make sure, why am I doing this? And the why, okay, now that's why I'm doing it.
I say this all the time. There is never a bad time to explain the why. to yourself or to other people. And when you want to ask people to come along for the mission, yourself included, for the reason of why you're getting up at 4 o'clock to start your morning routine and do all the work that you do, why? Because this is the mission that I'm on. And I think it's amazing. I was actually laughing, Jam, when you said add the because. I take my kids to school every morning. I'm grateful to do that. And I ask my kids, what kind of day are they going to have? And they know that the right answer is they're going to have a great day because they get to choose what kind of day they have. Sometimes my son will tell me he's going to have a bad day because, he's not having a great day to start. But, my son will say things like, I'm grateful for the trees. Because I say, what are you grateful for? And, that's like his go-to. I'm grateful for the grass. He does love nature. However, today he said, I'm grateful for my sissy, my dad, my mom, and Banner, who's our dog, because they make me feel special. I was like, whoa. And I said, well, that's a little different than grateful for the trees today, buddy. And I chuckled because that was like, I don't want to say a breakthrough because he may not do it again tomorrow, but it was an enjoyable thing to see him say today where, he's just not going through the road exercise of, all right, I just have to answer dad and go on to the next thing. He was actually thoughtful about it and connected it to the why. I think the other piece that I think about the why is it gives you the resilience and the grit to sustain when things get hard, right? And so when I talk to people, and I'm sure you had the same experience, and they're willing to give up, it's like, well, did you really want that thing? Were you really in pursuit of that thing? And the answer is no. I just thought other people thought I should have that, or other people. It's like, no, you got to live your life on your terms because that's the only thing that will sustain you when things get hard. And so, getting really clear on your own why, I think is the only path forward. And I don't know if you have commentary on that, but I think you're aligned.
Well, I 1,000% agree with it, man. Look, if you did your goals earlier and if you're looking at them and midway, you're like, wait, why did I do that? It happens all the time. So attaching that because right next to your goals is such a huge idea, and looking at it on a daily basis. I'm putting my hand up, sorry, on my bathroom mirror because that's where all my goals are. I call it the mirror method. I'm not the first to say it, won't be the last.
I love it.
But when you see that because, it does give you that extra little bit more to say, yeah, I'm going to embrace the suck today because not every day is going to be awesome. In fact, if you expect it to be awesome, that's great. I like that. But just know that there's going to be some tough times. You and I were also talking about perspective, brother. And this is one of my biggest lessons in 2022. Okay. I lost my dad in March. And I don't know why this continues to happen with human beings, but we forget perspective and we forget to cherish how important life is on a daily basis. And I'm not sure how to hold on to it, right? I have my daily reminders, which keep perspective, and I have a picture of my dad right there. And that helps. And I had my brother-in-law up because he had died of cancer early. So it helps. But the truth is, if this was your last day on earth, how would you be acting? How would you be behaving? And it would be in a way of joy and to give everything you had, all the love you had. But why don't we act like that all the time? And it's one of those questions that no one can answer. And I'm going to continue to write about it and think about it and podcasts about it. But it is fascinating to me, brother, that we lose perspective so quickly. And if we could just hold on to it every single day and just say, man, I'm so lucky to be breathing this air and seeing my family and being on this podcast and seeing people around the world on this screen. Like, we're connecting in a way that we couldn't, 5-10 years ago. That's just amazing. So anyway,
it is amazing. And I had a great conversation on a pre-interview for a guy that's going to be on the show at the end of the month, Cameron. And his company, they've made it to the Inc. 500, fast growing company. They sell urns and they sell jewelry for people to put ashes of loved ones in there. And he talked about a previous business where he was focused in on the finances and the flashy lifestyle. And he said, this business has so grounded me because I deal with death every single day. And it is so important, and it is such a reminder about the perspective. We joked about this. It's my favorite word in the English language because, when everyone else was reading comic books, I was reading the dictionary. But, he just talked about being moved by that. And, I shared with you when you shared about your dad passing. My mom passed away, during COVID, August 8th of 2020. And, she had been to death's doorstep so many times that we actually started taking bets on how she was going to pass away. And my mom was in on it, right? So she had a great sense of humor. She had herself for a trip and fall accident, but, liver transplant, 2 bouts of lung cancer, multiple skin cancers, heart valve, 12 inches of a bowel taken out. When you do that, you do get some perspective. And I think for me, it's always been the terminal state of like, oh my gosh, I can't waste this opportunity. And yeah, we lose it on an everyday basis. But I think all the things that you talked about in your morning routine, the gratitude, the meditation, the journaling, the thinking, the deep thought, all of those things, I think, help bubble that up so that we never get too far away from it. And we think, as I remind my kids, you may be the center of my universe, but you are not the center of the universe. And keeping grounded in that mindset is super cool. I love perspective. If anyone has any questions, because this has been great, if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand and we'll bring you on. You can ask JM, or you can put it in the chat and we'll ask it for you. This has been super, super fun. This is why I love doing this, because, sharing all of these ideas allows all of us to get better. The lessons that you've learned along the way, I can integrate them into my life. And it's so good. Oh, and I see you. Owen Fries is going to hop on.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation, taking a lot from it. I appreciate your guys' time. So I'm in the middle of baking out a morning routine as well. And one thing that's, I'm going to be doing a lot in 2023 is traveling, being in different environments. How do you maintain the routine, while changing environments month to month? That's something that I've been trying to plan ahead for.
Yeah, brother, it's a really good question. And thank you for asking it. Simplicity is going to be really important, especially when you're on the road. There's a couple things that typically get in the way. Your sleep patterns are going to be off, especially if you're on airplanes. Look, there's a ton of studies on that. Your eating patterns will be changing because regionally it's different, right? And then working out will change. So the first thing I'll tell you is give yourself some grace. And what I mean by that is it's not going to be perfect. In the moment that you give yourself that grace, say, it's okay. It really does make everything a little bit easier. And also just being open to the fact that, so for instance, maybe at home, I work out for an hour and I have my steam and then I have my cold plunge and whatever your routine is, it may look a lot different. And I'm okay with that. Because if you spend a lot of energy on, I'm not, well, next thing you know, I'm just not even going to go work out because what's the point? It's not the same at home. You know what? I'm gluten-free and dairy-free. And let's just say I choose to eat something that's not, well, now I'm just going to fall off the wagon altogether. No, that's not ideal because now it's really going to mess up my world. And so just giving yourself that grace to say, look, it's not going to be perfect, but I'm committed to it. And just checking in on a daily basis. In fact, this is total shameless plug, but my second book is literally a journal and it's what I coach clients on. And my first test for a client is, can you do something straight for 90 days? And it takes 5 minutes. And it's remarkable, Owen, how many people cannot commit to doing one thing for 90 days. And here's what I'll tell you. It's okay if you can't. Just give yourself that grace to say, you know what? I may have screwed up today, but I'll get back on it tomorrow. And it's not going to snowball into missing 3, 4, 5, 6 days. So that's what I would tell you. But just know that, look, man, traveling, it makes it challenging. I will give you one small piece of advice. When you get off an airplane, go do 20 minutes on elliptical on a treadmill. You will no longer ever have jet lag in your life. I don't know the exact science. I don't know why it works, but it's remarkable. And I don't even remember where I came up with it. but I landed in South Africa after like 20 hours on a plane and got off, did it, and I felt fantastic. So anyway, for what it's worth, that's another small tip. It's just hop on a treadmill or elliptical for 20 minutes. You're good to go.
I think that's amazing. The other thing that I'll share with you, Owen, I've had a morning routine for a long time prior to having kids. And so I now have multiple morning routines. If, for instance, Rachel has to hop on a flight at 5:30 in the morning, I'm not going to the gym that day. I need to figure out something else. I might have worked on a project late. And so, normally I go to bed at 9 and I'm up at 4. Today, I was working on something late last night. I got up at 5 o'clock. And so giving yourself that ability to have some grace and some change, it just means like, in some cases, I'm crunching down how much of I'm doing of each of those things. And so be, as JM said, be graceful, but also have yourself the ability to say like, if this, then that, and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to make up the morning routine. Hey, if I'm traveling, I'm shortening these things down. Make sure that you're staying in a hotel that has a hotel gym, right? Like these are things that you can set yourself up for success by asking the right questions in advance. Love it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I appreciate it. And, as you perfect the routine more and more, I'm sure you'll be able to adapt to the environments better. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. It's your greatest gift that you can give yourself. In my opinion, it's the greatest unfair advantage you can create in life. So, Dawn, you wanted to hop in. Dawn Bates, our resident genius.
Sure. Thanks, Jerry. It's good to see you again. I just wanted to jump in on this because I've been sailing around the world nonstop for the last 5 years, Owen. I move on from one location to the next every 7 to 10 days. And either sometimes I'm like when I was just in Latin America, I spent 23 hours on a coach because that was the only way to get through to where I needed to go. And sometimes because of the work I do, my book's all about social change and human rights. So I'm going to some of the really most dangerous areas of the world. And what JM was saying about when you actually get off from somewhere, always make sure wherever you're staying has got a bloody good mattress. You need a good night's sleep. But even if you can't get to the gym, I mean, JM was saying about, get on an elliptical or go on a treadmill. Do the mountain man. I've got on my laptop, I've got the Shaun T25 videos all loaded on my laptop. I always keep a jump rope with me, Pilates band, so I don't have to carry dumbbells with me because I've got my resistance bands. Go for a run. As soon as I get off a boat, I'm running because, you can't really go for a run on a boat. You can do your best. You can climb up and down the mast, but going ocean swimming all the time. Like when we were sailing across the Atlantic, I jumped off the boat in the middle of the Atlantic and I went for a swim. We're in the doldrums for 5 days. What more could we do? And so being an author, a full-time author, not someone who I am primarily an author, hence why I can write so many books in a day, JM. And so for me, it's like I sit down quite a bit, but I also stand, but I do like I have a series of 10-minute exercise blasts. So like for core workout or squat workouts or, for like high impact. But I also, like, soon as we finish on here, I'm about to go and do a 30-minute kickboxing session. And, it's 9:30 at night here. But also I mentioned about menopause. I see so many women trying to hustle at 5 a.m. in the morning. If you've had hot sweats during the night or you have not been sleeping well during the night, this impacts. And people say, oh no, you've got to keep to a routine. When you're traveling, you have to make up your own routine. And JM was saying, show up as yourself. Just because those rules work for other people does not mean to say they're going to work for you. You can't live by other people's rules. You have to give yourself permission to have permission to give yourself permission, and I just had to jump in there on that nomadic thing because a lot of people fly, not a lot of people sail around the world. And so, yeah, but one of those books is my digital nomad book from a perspective of a single mum in her 40s. So there's lots of stuff in there that will probably help you. But yeah, just thought I'd jump in on that. Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Don. That was amazing. JM, I'm going to cap us off because I want you to share with everyone something that you shared with me. I was like, damn, that is so good. And so, people are resistant to change. Tell me about your approach of how we can get people to change, but tweak that mindset.
Yeah, man, this is one of those crazy things that took me so long to figure out. You know, when you're trying to really help someone and you see it in them and you're trying to change them. Well, guess what? People don't like change. Now, Dawn sailing around the world, she is adapted to change. She enjoys and embraces that. That's cool. The majority of human beings, change is scary because it's unknown and it's not comfortable. Okay. And forever, I would try to change people's habits and trying to change their routines. What I realized is the moment I changed that word to upgrade, everyone loves to upgrade. If you go to the airline and they're like, hey, instead of being on coach, like Dawn said, for 20 hours, hey, we're going to bump you to first class. Is Dawn going to be pissed off? No, she's going to be like, yes, thank you so much. Same thing. We change our cell phones, upgrade them about every year. We are so comfortable with upgrading. But the funny thing is it's a change. You're changing your seat from coach to first class. You're changing your cell phone from iPhone 12 to 14 or whatever it is now. You're getting a rental car from a standard to a full size. It's a change, but you like it. And so the moment that I started telling my clients, hey, I know you don't want to change. Are you cool with upgrading? Oh, I love to upgrade. The moment we switched the terminology, it was shocking how they're like, oh, I'm all in. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll upgrade all day. And it's funny, just this small little change in a word from change to upgrade, even though it's the same thing, how receptive people were. And I do believe that's what the next book's going to be titled. I'm pretty certain that's what I started with anyway. And it is funny, Jerry. It's one of those things that you're like, how did it take me so long to figure this out?
It was so good. When you said it, I was like, damn, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's wild, man, but it does. I'll do that. I'll talk to people, and when I speak, and I'll say, how many people like to change? And like maybe 20% of the room. How many people like to be upgraded? Every room and a hand in the room. So it's like, all right, let's not fight this.
I love it. Well, once we get upgrade out, we'll have you back and we'll talk more of a deeper dive on upgrade. JM, thanks for coming and sharing your wisdom. Amazing stuff. Where can people find more of JM Ryerson?
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And I love the format. This is different in terms of the podcast and people on. I really love because I get to see the faces. You know what I'd say? Let's Go Win podcasts. It's my favorite forum because I really enjoy this commentating back and forth and learning from people and hearing perspectives. So I would say go check out Let's Go Win podcast, brother. That's really, you asked me my goal in 2023. And that is the focus, is to really take that to the next level, because I really enjoy helping people live their best lives. And the guests that are on that, they do that. So that would be the spot.
I love it. I'm going to go check it out myself. Do it. Every one of you, do it. Speaking of call to actions, right? So I'm on this mission. I'm so grateful that you guys are here and along for the ride. People like Summerlin Anderson and Dawn Bates who show up on a regular basis. I'm grateful for the two of you for being here to support. For all of you, whether you're listening or here, I would love your help because I'm not great at it. I'm usually the one giving the help. And so if you can go like, subscribe, listen to the podcast, recommend it to a friend, invite someone to the live show. Next week, we have my coach, Timmy Gallagher. He is a two-time person. JM, you'll be the next two-time person that we'll have on the show. But Timmy and we're going to continue the conversation about positive mindsets and making sure that your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions are serving you. It's so important as we head into the start of 2023 that we protect and create this bulletproof mindset. In my opinion, we're in for a rocky ride here, at least in the economy. And so, Salesforce just announced that they were going to lay off 8,000 people. Amazon announced 18,000 people. And so we got to double down to make sure that, as JM, as you said, we put the mask on ourselves first, and let's make sure that we do that. So come join us next week and come bring a friend. That would be amazing. JM, thanks again for coming and being here and sharing your wisdom. Really appreciate it.